Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the First Fridays Winnipeg Art Talk. I'm Sarah Hodges-Kolisnyk. I'll be your host, your moderator for this evening as we talk about crypto creatives, what NFTs can mean for your art. So I will introduce our guest in just a few moments, but before I do that, of course, we have a few intro things to run through tonight. So as I hope you've noticed, we have all kinds of different events going on this week for First Fridays in the Exchange. It's so exciting how many openings and events that are going on tonight. I will direct you to check out firstfridayswinnipeg.org to get the complete listing, to get any capacity restrictions or anything like that. But there's all kinds of events going on. One that I think is really exciting is happening at Center for Craft over on Cumberland. Casey Adams has an exhibit on there right now, curated by Amy Craft, and they're going to have a live performance at 8 p.m. So if you zip over there, you can check that out. Also, if you need a drink or a nibble after that performance, you can head back over to Nonsuch Brewing on Pacific. They have a pop-up with Roughage Eatery, and one of the folks who run Roughage was a student of mine back in the day, so it'd be really nice to check that out. But all kinds of really cool events going on, so check out firstfridayswinnipeg.org. I also want to thank our sponsors for the evening. We have the Winnipeg Arts Council, the Manitoba Arts Council, and the Winnipeg Free Press. So definitely check those out. I'd also like to start by with a land acknowledgement. So First Fridays in the Exchange was started to encourage people to come to the Exchange District in Winnipeg. We acknowledge that the Exchange District is located within Treaty 1 territory, the original lands of the Anishinaabe, Nahiawewak, Ojibwe, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Métis. Our water comes from Treaty 3 territory, and our hydroelectric power comes from Treaty 5 territory. We would like to work towards greater understanding and acting on how to decolonize art, artistic practice, public discourse, and ourselves. So before I get to the important task of introducing our guest for today, I do just want to acknowledge, I know a lot of you might know that I'm a photographer, I'm a curator at an MHC gallery and an arts educator, but I confess I am an NFT newbie. I don't know very much about NFTs. I certainly didn't before I started researching for our talk tonight. So if you're like one of the many folks who feel a little bit overwhelmed by how much it might feel like there is to know and learn about NFTs, you're not alone. It's possible. And I certainly don't know all the lingo, so I'm very excited that we have JD Hawk here tonight to help me with that. So JD Hawk is a Red River Métis artist who works in oil paint, stone carving, and India ink, but he also has experienced firsthand translating his art practice to digital painting and to the NFT space. So JD, before we jump into talking about all things NFT, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your work? And I think Aaron will share some images for us as well of some of your work.
Sure. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me. So yeah, my name is JD. There's no vowels, just consonants. I am a Red River Métis citizen. I get that from both my parents. Our history is all over Manitoba, all the way from York Factory Reservation, all the way down south to Minnesota at Red Lake Reservation and into Saskatchewan. My grandparents are originally from the Paw area, and my grandfather was a trapper up there by trade. But that came to a halt when Hydro actually came in and took the land and kicked our family off the land, and they're forced here to Winnipeg to live in the North End and live in poverty. Really interesting fact about my grandfather is that when he was young and he joined the army, when he joined, on his military record, it says right there, intelligence for an Indian. So you can see, and that's just 2 generations from me. It's kind of heartbreaking to see that. So I am originally from Winnipeg. That's where our family moved to, and I'm here now. And I've been doing art for most of my life. I have a famous uncle. If you want to Google him, his name is Armin J. Paquette. He's 92 and he's doing well. You will see his artwork that's mostly prairie stuff, but he also has stuff from the North End where he also grew up. Traditionally, I'm an oil painter. I've been doing that for many years. I was dabbling in soapstone carving. And over the past couple of years during this incident we've had to stay at home, I started dabbling in indie ink. Instead of going watercolors, I grabbed some indie ink and I treated them like watercolor and created some paintings with those. What else can I tell you? Oh, and NFTs, of course. That's why we're here. Yeah, so, and then I got into NFTs. I like to expand my knowledge, expand my creativity. And so I wanted to learn about that and I got into it a couple of years ago.
Okay, I feel like it's only really been around and taking off for a couple of years. So you must have been an early adopter. And I want to like jump right in and ask like, oh, did you make your millions like everybody kind of thinks about with NFTs? But maybe let's take it a step back, because I know in talking to folks to prepare for today, some people had no idea what NFTs are. So maybe let's start there. What is an NFT?
Sure. An NFT stands for non-fungible token. Basically, it's a computer code that's placed on an item to say that this is an original item created by either a musician or an artist or even a sports player, is what it comes down to.
Okay, so does it have to be digital art? Like we saw your digital art that was a white bison a few moments ago. So does it have to be something created digitally?
It doesn't have to be created digitally, but it has to be transformed into something digital, a JPEG, for lack of a better term.
Okay, so if I make oil paintings, I would have to scan it, photograph it, somehow convert it to a digital file, digital image file, and upload it somewhere, which we'll get to in a second. But NFTs, so what I've found, NFTs can be anything digital. When we say a digital image file, my mind goes to JPEG, like you just said, but it could be, could it be a video?
Right. So
Okay.
there are videos out there, absolutely,
Okay.
that are.
And for if there's any writers listening as well, I've found as I've been following these Twitter spaces about NFTs that NFT poetry is a big thing that seems to be starting to take off as well. So it could be bits of text that have been turned into a digital image file as well, right?
That's a new one for me, actually. I haven't heard of that. I would assume if it was a poem that it would be converted into an NFT because it's created by an artist, a poetist.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So you create a digital image file and then it goes on to something called the blockchain. Is that right?
Right.
Okay. So blockchain, do you want to introduce what the heck that means to us, or?
Oh my goodness. I don't know if I can explain it quite well. Basically, the blockchain has different layers on it, and the NFTs go onto one of the layers where they are tracked and are traceable. So you know when they were created, on what date, at what time, and who created them. And on that blockchain, other people on the internet can go and find them and see when it was created, who owned it, if it's been sold one or two times or several times, who the current owner is, or the current whoever owns the wallet that the NFT is in. They can find out which wallet it belongs to.
Okay. There's lots to unpack there. I should point out, as we're going through all this, I know there's lots of details. So if you have any questions as we go along and you're watching tonight, there is a join the chat button that you should see under your little video player. And if you click that join the chat, then you can log in through your Google or YouTube or whatever account and be able to add comments and ask us questions. So feel free to ask questions as we go along. They'll pop up in our chat and we can address them, especially if it's something specific to what we're talking about. But okay, back to blockchain. So as I was listening to all these podcasts and reading articles and trying to figure out what NFTs are, one thing I came across is that it was described as this big giant ledger, a general ledger that kind of keeps track of all these transactions and all these files that are getting traded in NFT space. Does that sound about right?
Very accurate.
Okay.
Yep.
And I think it was really important. You talked about that it's traceable. And I think I know in talking to other artists and talking to other folks in preparation for today, people felt very confused by the fact that you didn't have a physical artwork in your hands or to hang on your wall. And they felt like, that it wasn't enough to have this digital file. So do you come across that? Like, what do you say to people who say, no, NFTs aren't for me, I need that physical artwork piece?
Right. So you got two groups, really. You got the ones that want the physical piece, that want the painting on the wall, or you have the new generation that are all about the crypto space, the internet space, and they are more apt to having something, a digital picture. To them, it means something. It means value. It's worth something to them. They can show it off, because a lot of people, like nowadays, are so hooked on the internet that you can't show off your Lamborghini anymore. You can't show off your Rolex watch. And so the way they want to show off things is through NFTs and having a digital picture that only they own. And so there's some value to it. Yeah,
absolutely. And it is, like you said, traceable. So this issue, like in studying art history, right, we start to lose, especially with Indigenous artworks and artworks from other cultures, we start to lose the story of the maker or the story of the artwork or the story of the object that we're talking about. And we may or may not have a few generations of provenance where it got traded or passed along, but we lose the origins of that piece. And that doesn't happen in the NFT space. It always lives on the blockchain in your wallet, as you mentioned. So we'll come back to wallets in a second. The other thing I kind of wanted to ask you about that I was trying to wrap my head around with blockchain is the idea that the blockchain, no matter which blockchain you're on, is decentralized. So that there's never this middleman, there's never this bank you're going through or broker or anything like that. You own your wallet. You're the only one who has access to it and can trade with it and things like that. And it seems to me, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me like there is this kind of community spirit to it, right? That you're in charge of your own materials and you're trading on this blockchain that has this community. And even the idea of the blockchain is a community of computers who keep track of this ledger so that it can never kind of be erased or deleted or lost. Right?
Right.
So do you find that spirit translate into NFT space as well then, that kind of like decentralized community spirit, or does it work more like the kind of in real life art marketplace?
No, the whole decentralization thing is huge right now. A lot of people are tired of government taking control over everything, their finances, whether you agree with masks or not. It's just people are just, I don't want to go down that route, but anyway, I'm just saying that government controls so much that people are just fed up with it. They want to live in peace. They want to get along with each other. They're tired of the politics. They're tired of everything. And so this whole idea of decentralization puts ownership on the actual person and not the government. And so with NFTs, people are drawn to that as an artist because you own it and nobody else owns it. You give it out, for a fee, and then somebody else owns it without the middleman. And there's no really regulations on it. It's between you and that person, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So are you interacting directly with the people who are buying your artworks then?
The NFT artwork?
Yes. Yeah. Sorry. The NFT artwork.
Right. Yeah. So at first I am, right. So if someone wants to buy one of my NFTs, I deal with them directly And from there, it's under their control. When they sell it, I do get a small percentage from that sale, and it keeps going on and on and on.
Okay, so you can also, because you have this blockchain that's always traceable, you can make royalties as you go along, or you make commissions as it gets resold.
Right, and I don't have to track that. The blockchain tracks that for me. So it could be in the middle of the night, I can wake up and there's an email saying, hey, you know, it sold for $1,000. You get 2% of the sales. Here's your 2% in your wallet. And if it's Bitcoin or Ethereum, it goes right to that wallet.
Okay, this is a good transition. Bitcoin, Ethereum, yes, cryptocurrencies, wallets, and platforms. Okay, see, so this is where I think people start to get overwhelmed, because there are so much lingo to know about NFT space. So cryptocurrency in and of itself is this whole thing that it sounds like a pirate term to me, maybe, I don't know, cryptocurrency. So this is a digital currency, but there's a variety of different ones, just like we have physical currencies for different places. So what are the popular currencies for artists?
Well, right now it's Ethereum and Bitcoin.
Okay.
Those are the two big ones. And so for my NFTs, I'm selling them for Ethereum right now. And that's what I've stuck with.
Okay. And so sometimes Ethereum is also called ETH, right?
Right.
Okay. So for those of you listening who are new, like me, if you hear someone talking about ETH, they're talking about the cryptocurrency Ethereum. So how do I get cryptocurrency?
There's several exchanges here in Canada. I'm not saying which ones are better than the other, but for example, there's ShakePay. ShakePay offers Bitcoin and Ethereum. There's oh man, my head just went blank. Any exchange that deals with cryptocurrency, you can purchase Ethereum. That seems to be the big one right now for minting an NFT. Another term that just threw it at you there. So you'd have to have Ethereum, buy the Ethereum, you put it into your wallet, and the most common one is a MetaMask wallet. And from there, you go into another website where you can mint your NFT, and you pay an Ethereum to mint it. And then once it's minted, that's it. You just sit back and wait.
Yes. Okay. And so when you're minting it, this is like a platform where you would be listing your NFT, your digital file. And so what are some of the platforms then that we should think about?
The two most common ones is, oh shoot. One is Rarible, and the other one is OpenSea. Sorry.
OpenSea, yeah.
Those are the two big ones.
Mm-hmm.
And they go back and forth.
Yeah, and so you can think of OpenSea as a marketplace for all kinds of different NFTs, right?
Right.
Okay. Now, one cautionary tale I came across when learning about NFTs is that because these are decentralized, these blockchains and these currencies, you need to make sure you're keeping track of all your information for your wallet and like never losing it, never sharing it. So because you don't want it to get hacked or anything like that, because this is your money, these are your investments. So for those of you wanting to get into NFTs and creating your own NFTs, definitely make sure you have that information stored somewhere safe, multiple locations, so that you don't lose it. Because if you lose it, from what I understand, there's no way of getting it back. There's no like forgot my password button, because there's no one. Yeah, there's no one keeping track of it.
Yeah, because when you open up a wallet, when you first get your wallet online, there's a seed phrase that comes with it. It's usually 8 words.
Okay.
Minimum 8 words. And if you don't write those down somewhere and you lose it, you're not getting back into your wallet. And if you own like 1.5 ETH, which is a few $1,000s, it's gone. And that's a lot of money.
Absolutely. Okay, so you've been warned. Make sure you keep track of how to get into your wallet. And wallets are public information as well. Is that right?
Yeah, they are traceable. If you use a different name, like if you don't use your real name, then nobody will know who actually owns it.
Right. So
But-
are there benefits to using your real name as an artist, or should you keep it anonymous?
That's a good question. That's a good question. I don't mind using my name. I don't see the benefits of not using my name. I think as an artist, you might want to use your name so people can actually get a hold of you, like look for you right away. Yeah, so I don't see a problem with it.
So then it also makes me think of cautionary tales about Web 2 space where there's trolls and people can, find your personal information and track you down and all these things. Is that an issue in NFT space?
I haven't heard too much of that. Well, I've heard of the trolls, obviously, but as far as any negative side effects, like I've had none. I don't know any of my other friends who are into NFTs have anything negative happen to them. Yeah, that's a good question. That's something you'd really have to look into and research for sure.
Okay. So then maybe we'll review slightly because we've talked about a bunch of different pieces, but not really a step-by-step of if I'm an artist or if I'm looking to collect NFT art, what I do. So how do I create an NFT, or how do I get set up to buy NFTs? So step one, you have to go out and get some cryptocurrency, right? Whether that's Ethereum or Bitcoin, purchase it and set up your wallet, maybe with MetaMask, maybe with one of the other tools out there.
Right.
So what is there, like, what is it? Do you have an idea of what the initial cost is? I mean, you might buy different amounts of Ethereum to get started, but what's like if you wanted to just invest a tiny amount of money and get started?
Okay, so this is where you have to track the market. Like there's more to it. You really have, so you have to track the market. So for example, Ethereum right now is down. It's going through a crash right now. And so buying an NFT or getting into the NFT, minting your own NFT right now could be a good thing because the prices are pretty low. Because you're paying, like for example, if it costs you let's say half an ETH. If it costs you half an ETH right now, as soon as ETH goes up, well, that half ETH that you bought today is going to be worth, twice as much a year from now. And because we are going through this recession and this crash of the bear market in the crypto space, now is a good time to start thinking about it even more seriously. I follow the markets and I still think they're going to go down further. So if I were to mint an NFT, I personally, and this is not financial advice, I would wait till ETH hits, about 1,700 Canadian, and then I would start minting NFTs again.
For one ETH would be 1,700 Canadian.
Right.
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 Okay.
And it won't cost you that much to mint an NFT. Like it might only cost you like $80 based on ETH prices right now.
Right. Okay. So because and I think this is important to note because some of the talks I had initially when thinking about doing a talk on this is that, NFTs were this kind of like democratic space where anyone could become rich overnight kind of thing and anyone can jump in, but you do need a base amount of knowledge. You do need a base amount to kind of invest and put some money in, just like anything else, right?
Right.
And so where would you suggest starting to follow to kind of track the markets? Is there some resources or websites that you follow in particular?
I follow a whole bunch actually, both on YouTube, on Twitter. The best place to gain knowledge about crypto itself is through YouTube. Some of the bigger YouTube channels. Listen to how they speak. Listen to the words. What the terminology. Because you do have to follow the market a little bit. You don't want to go in blindly. You don't want to pay top dollar for an NFT that can go down in 6 months from now if you don't know what the market's doing. Yeah, so which ones to follow? Good question. There's one guy I particularly like because he does technical analysis on Bitcoin and Ethereum, and his name is Crypto Jeb on YouTube. He's a very smart guy when it comes to reading the charts. So if you're new to reading charts to find out when a good time Ethereum might be going down, you might want to watch his videos on YouTube.
Crypto Jeb. Okay. So yeah, I'm just looking at this slide that I had created. So how do I create an NFT? I did put buy yourself some cryptocurrency and set up a wallet as kind of the first step. But really, most folks that I talk to, and you included, JD, that getting into the community and building a community and networking sounds like it's really the most important step. It's not just, throwing your work out there and hoping something happens. And I think I'll come back to that in a second because it is such an important thing. There's lots of ways to do it. But once you feel comfortable in the space, you've connected with this community, obviously you have to find a way to create a digital artwork. So maybe we can throw up a couple of your NFTs on the slides there, Erin. There's the white buffalo, or there's the geometric wolf one. Yeah. So JD, what inspired you to translate your oil painting and India ink experiments and your oil painting practice into these digital NFTs, or digital paintings, I should say?
Well, originally, I was doing cryptocurrency for a while, and when I learned about NFTs, I wanted to know more about it because it related to the art world. And I said, okay, this is something new. The crypto world is here, especially with the younger generation. They know so much more about it. It's just incredible. And I thought, well, how can I learn about it? How can I enhance my name, my artwork, reach a broader audience? So that's how I started getting into it, just by more out of curiosity than anything. And so one of the first ones I did was I wanted something that would represent someone who's a traditional oil painter going into digital work. And so the one I came up with was a picture of me with a magnifying glass, and there's 4 images like a JPEG. And so that was one of the first ones I created. It was an oil painting converted into a digital piece, and it became an NFT. So it's like looking into the crypto world is what it kind of represents from the traditional space.
And so do you find, is there something that's more successful in your experience in NFTs? Is it more successful to create a digital version of a physical painting, or to just start digital altogether and create, I know you have some different kind of characters that reappear in different digital paintings and things like that. Have you found anything more successful than others?
No, because it has to do with your audience. Like, for example, most of my audience happens to be my age or older, so they like something physical. Well, I want to also reach the younger generation too, and the younger generation wants a JPEG. So with my first couple NFTs, they come with the actual oil painting. So whoever buys the NFT, I will ship out that oil painting to them, free of charge. It's part of the package. And now what they do after that is totally up to them. Now, if you're just selling digital paintings, there is an audience for that, but it's a select audience.
Right. So then I also know that the fishing lure NFT that you created, it's free? Anyone can purchase it? How does that work?
Well, that one's not an NFT. Actually, that one was made for fun. It was just a digital painting. I created that. I wanted to give it out for free. So, for example, if you mentioned about community and building a name for yourself. So a lot of people have heard the person, he goes by the name of Beeple. Yes. Beeple, well, he sold one of his NFTs for like $69 million, I think it was. It was just crazy. And people want to know how he did it. Well, if you listen to his story, for about 10 years, he would give away digital paintings for free almost every day. So he built a community. He built his name up, and people recognized his name because he had such a unique name. And they've been hearing it for like 10 years. And because of that, he has so many followers that he was able to create this NFT and sell it for that amount. And that's probably the biggest thing about getting into NFTs. You really have to have a community that likes your work.
Yes, yeah, and it was the first. So, and I thought it was interesting. It was Christie's that sold Beeple's painting. It was the first purely digital work, I think they said, that sold through a major auction house, and it went for 69 million. So that, I think this was like maybe the tipping point where all the artists thought, oh, we should check out what these NFTs are. So yes, absolutely.
See, that's actually a big mistake by many artists who are getting into the digital artwork. They think that they're going to be millionaires, the next day. It doesn't work like that. Like, he has some history behind him. He has 10 years of history, and that's important to know. That doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah. So maybe we'll jump to the who in the NFT world. I talk about building community on that slide. And what are so some of the places that I've come across to build community are Twitter spaces. It seems like if you have a Twitter account, you get on Twitter, you're talking about your work, you're connecting with others. And then there's these spaces that are very similar to this. They're like a talk where people are getting together and talking about all kinds of different topics, but you can find NFT spaces. Do you jump on any Twitter spaces like that? Is that how you build community? Or
I'm guilty. I haven't done much lately because I've been so swamped with other projects in the physical world. But yeah, Twitter there's a big market on Twitter for the crypto stuff and for NFTs. And it doesn't matter which NFT you follow. Like, you don't have to follow the art NFTs, follow the music NFTs, follow the sports NFTs, because they will all have the same terminology. They'll have ideas. It's just embrace it. Like, just go right for it. Dive right into the deep end and just learn.
And the collectors will be on different NFT spaces as well, right? So they're out there shopping around for new connections, maybe.
Right, and that's another big part of it too. So these people that are buying NFTs, a lot of them that are making the first buy they don't want to keep them. They see something and say, hey, you know what? I can resell that for a higher price. And so that you have to target those people with your artwork.
And bringing it back to this idea of community that we kind of started talking about when we were thinking about decentralized blockchain and things like that. From what I have experienced jumping on these Twitter spaces, NFT Twitter spaces, there is a huge sense of wanting to create a community and wanting to support each other as artists. And I think I know as a curator and someone who has worked with artists who maybe feel a little nervous about putting their work out there, it can be a wonderful thing to have a little bit of the shield of anonymity online and also jump into this space where people just are so supportive and just want to talk art.
Right. And that's very true. If you can create a community around your particular artwork or particular a theme and get people to follow that theme, they will see your artwork. And the community is very supportive. They really are. But you do get some trolls, and those ones, it's so easy. Like, just block them. Like, get them out of there. But yeah, generally the community is very, very supportive. A lot of them do want to see you succeed, because if you succeed and they're following you, they have the ability to succeed too, because they know that you're backing them up.
Right. And there is a lot of that of liking each other's work and sharing each other's work out and things like that. I also came across this idea of collaborations on NFTs. Have you ever collaborated with any other artists in NFT space?
No, I haven't. No.
Okay.
No.
I don't know. When I'm making work, I tend to work alone. So the idea was a little bit new to me, but yeah, apparently there is, because there are so many people coming into the space and starting out new, there's definitely a camaraderie where if you reach out to someone who has a lot of followers or someone who makes work that you're really interested in, at the very least, it seems like they're very likely to help you get started and things like that and point you in the right direction. And then there's also opportunities to collaborate with other artists in the same genre or perhaps other genres as well.
Yep. Yeah. Ask the artists what they're doing. Like the people that are creating the NFTs, ask them how they did it. Ask them how they're doing it. Ask for advice. I found that when you are direct with the artists themselves, they want to answer questions for you. They like to feel that, hey, you know, I know something. I can share something with somebody, you know, and it makes them feel good to be able to share. Like I love sharing my stuff with people. This is how I do it. This is how I do it. Yeah, come over for coffee. I'll show you how I did it. You know, and other artists, they generally want to share their knowledge.
Mm-hmm. And that slide talks about curated marketplaces as well. So I think you maybe mentioned Rarible, but I know there's a whole slew of kind of curated marketplaces specifically for art. Some of them are Foundation, Super Rare, Known Origin was one of them. So some of these you have to apply to get your work minted on them. Is that right?
There's a couple there. You know, I didn't even, be honest, I didn't even bother looking at them when I realized that you do have to apply. I think that with everything on the internet being so free, like as far as social media is concerned, and because we've been so isolated in the last 2.5 years, everybody's on the internet right now and still or have been on it. And you can make a name for yourself just by you know, going on Instagram or going on Facebook or going on some of the other Twitter. So the galleries, I think the galleries are kind of suffering right now because of that.
I'm going to pause here because we have a few questions coming in. So it says, without the tastemaker middleman, how do you establish art credibility and get your work noticed out of the crowd of stuff on the internet? How do you stand out?
You know, that comes with time. It's not something that doesn't happen overnight. You have to establish your credibility by being there for a number of years, like show that you've been consistent, you are consistent, you're still going, you've been doing it for a number of years, and people see that. And that's how you establish your credibility. You can't establish your credibility like in a couple weeks, like forget it, like who's going to pay attention to you?
Yeah, and I think that speaks a little bit to the quote that I had up there earlier as well, where it said, as the crypto art space lacks the formal role of gallerists, curators, and museums, success in this space is mediated by potential direct relationships between artists and collectors. So I think like in my mind, it loops back to that idea of building those networks and those community connections to get your name out there. And like I said, there is so much of that on Twitter, and I'm sure other social media spaces too, where people are sharing each other's work and promoting work that they see as having that something interesting, whether or not it's credibility. I know the question does further go into if you're thinking about hidden identity, it could add to an artist's mystique, but then there is also the challenge of NFT fraud and things like that. So do you know about copyright issues and scams and frauds that happen in NFT space, JD?
You know, there are people who have, you know, taken a screenshot of the JPEG and tried to pawn it off as an NFT, but it all comes down to the blockchain. It can be traced through the blockchain. It's like anything. You just have to do your due diligence to make sure you are buying a true NFT, that it's not one that's been created off to the side. Do the research before you buy one. Yeah.
And I know I have been on Twitter spaces where the people that are talking about their purchases, the collectors that are out there talking, seems like a fairly common thing that they kind of make the mistake once when they're, you know, just jumping in and they have this fear of missing out on something and they buy it without, like you said, doing their due diligence, and then they get burned. So I think it does happen, absolutely. But like you said, there is that traceability in the blockchain that we often don't have if we're just sharing our artwork in other places, especially in this highly visual, highly internet-based world these days. Yeah.
Yeah, and I find that people, if they get emotionally involved, that's where you can get screwed over, because they have the fear of missing out. Here's a NFT by an artist, they know the name, they don't do the research, but they heard the name before and they get fear of missing out, so they buy it without realizing that was not the real artist. Don't let your emotions get involved just yet.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have heard artists in Twitter spaces talking about the importance of having a body of work, or having enough of a community behind you, enough of a career behind you, so that people should at least sort of recognize that your work is your work. Like they should recognize something in the style or something in the body of work, so that it's a bit easier to have that name for yourself, or that certain aesthetic, or that credibility.
Right. It comes down to the time thing. You have to be consistent. You have to do it over time. It doesn't happen in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is a lot to know. And that speaks to, someone had just commented, can you hire yourself out as a guide through this? Yeah, though, I think that if you are interested in exploring it, there are these Twitter spaces that are really welcoming, or other spaces. Discord is another platform that people get together and talk about NFTs a lot on. I'm not as familiar with Discord as Twitter. But if you don't know, there's people there who will kind of help you out. And the other part of that, people talk about shilling your work on Twitter spaces. So joining these, like, just like in the real world, you need to kind of have your elevator pitch, I guess, right?
Yes.
Of what your NFT project is. And that's one of those lingo things. People talk about their project. So definitely practice your Twitter elevator pitch, I guess. Okay, let's see, where were we at? And again, if anyone has any questions, you can click on that join the chat button that should be under your video player screen. And I think you may have to like log in through your Google or YouTube account or whatever it happens to be, but then you can type your questions right into the chat. So feel free to do that. Okay. Oh, I know what I did want to ask. Some spaces that I've been on, JD, they talk about kind of having this added value or added utility to your NFT project. So you mentioned that you will sometimes, if it's a scan or an image of an oil painting, you'll send the actual physical painting to the buyer. So is that a thing? Like, when you go on OpenSea, for example, if you're going to be trading your works on OpenSea and minting them on OpenSea, there's a screen that comes up with your little thumbnails that people can see, and then there's a description of the project. So would you list that right in the project, almost like it's a contract that they would get the artwork after the purchase if they wanted it?
Absolutely. Yeah, it adds more value to the NFT itself. Like I said, I'm trying to reach both audiences, the ones that like just the images on the computer and the ones that like to have the physical object hanging on their wall.
So then, curious, if someone had bought the NFT, could they print it however they wanted to and put it up on their wall then if they own it?
Sure. Yeah, nothing stopping them from doing that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then do you ever, I have come across projects that have this kind of added utility function. So I had been listening to a talk for artists in NFT space, and the artist they were interviewing also teaches art. So if you bought an NFT, you would get a 1-hour art lesson or something like that to go with the piece you had bought. Is that fairly common to have this kind of utility piece built into the NFT?
You know, I've seen some real crazy stuff actually. And it's funny now, I can't remember the name of the guy, but if you bought one of his NFTs, he sent you a box, and in that box was his own personal items. Like it could be a comb, it could be a toy car they played with as a kid. And people buy it. So that was just that was his gimmick, and it worked, or his shtick.
Okay. You know, this makes me think, I know I have it on a slide later on, but I want to bring up the question right now of so if you're having all these gimmicks to try to like get your project out there and get people interested in buying your NFT, whatever happens to art for art's sake, for just being curious and making art? Like, does it always have to have this kind of marketing piece that some artists have a hard time thinking about, that word marketing and selling work?
Wow. Like for me, when I create something, I create it for myself. The only time I create something for somebody is if it's portraits, and that's as far as I go. Everything else is my own stuff that I like to do for myself. And if it sells, it sells. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Like, I'm okay with it. Yeah. And wow, you got me there.
Okay, well, question, would you, if you paint portraits, would you sell a portrait as an NFT?
Only if the client wanted it as an NFT on top of the oil painting, then sure, why not? And I can see that happening. That could definitely be very real. And that would be cool, because a portrait only sells once. But if that portrait gets sold to another family member, you get that commission on top of that. So, yeah, good question.
Yeah. I don't know how to answer it exactly. I think it is a really interesting question. And I find this about NFT space overall. I had this really deep moment thinking about it, where NFTs and the crypto space is this decentralized kind of, if you view it, I guess, through a Marxist lens, right? It's decentralized. It's this community structure and community of people working together and selling together and all these things and setting their own prices and that kind of stuff. But then at the same time, there is this very, very commercial capitalist aspect to it, where you want to get out and sell your work. So it had this really interesting tension as I was thinking about it as an artist who might make conceptual work, and why I would want to get involved in NFT space.
Right. And because there's so many facets to art itself. When you're starting out, a lot of people do pet portraits. If that helps pay the rent, then do it. But make sure you have time for yourself to create something that is not going to be for commercial profit type thing. That if it sells, it sells. If it doesn't, it doesn't. You did it for yourself. It's like a true piece of art. And over time, it will sell, because all those paintings you did of pets or of people, people keep those, and other people see them, and word of mouth gets around. And so I think if you're trying to pay the rent, you kind of have to market some stuff, market yourself. But then I'm very fortunate where I don't have to anymore, because I've been doing it for so long. And now I can paint whatever I want. I can be picky, I can be choosy, and it's stress-free. It's a nice feeling to do what I want. And other artists can get there. They can get there.
I hope so. Okay, so I'm just looking at the clock, and we have, 10, 15 minutes, give or take a little bit. So I will remind folks, if you're listening and you're still not sure about NFTs or how to get started, absolutely type those questions into the chat. But one thing I did want to bring up, I was prepping for this talk today, and I reread Loretta Todd's seminal work, Narratives in Cyberspace, Transference, Tradition, and Technology. So this was from way back in 2005. Loretta Todd was thinking about kind of Web 1 and cyberspace, but I think so many of the principles still can be applied and help us think about where this has gone since then. So Aaron, if you could find that slide, I think it's the second last one. But I'll read the quote, and I think the quote is a good way to help us start to think about NFT space. Oh, no, keep going. It's why are these institutions recreated in cyberspace when cyberspace is supposedly heralding a new world of anarchy or democracy, depending on the age of the heralded? So again, there's that split in kind of audience or demographic. So it continues, what will be the consequence for future generations of internalizing the power relation that museums, malls, and arcades imply? What change will occur to their sense of freedom, their free will, as the power relationship between those who own information and those who access it remains much as it does today, or perhaps even regresses to feudal ways? So I feel like there's so much to unpack in that quote, but some of the things we've kind of been dancing around already. I think what I want to talk about and think about with Loretta Todd's quote is applying maybe an Indigenous lens to NFT space. And that's how Loretta Todd kind of was applying it to cyberspace and thinking about, thinking about future generations, thinking about past generations, thinking about how these other institutions are recreated in cyberspace. So I know we talked a little bit about how are marginalized peoples represented in the NFT space. How have you any experience with that? I know I've experienced a few different things in Twitter spaces talking about it. So maybe we could start with your experience in the NFT space as a Métis artist.
Right. So I've never had anybody like personally attack me for that, or I haven't had any negative experiences. And I guess when you think about it, if you're going to go as someone who's anonymous and create NFTs because you're scared that you might be left out because of your culture or because of your gender, and then become anonymous and see what happens. I find in the art world, though, wow, that we're just more accepting of people, so. But it's the clients, I guess. That's a good, wow. Yeah.
So my question stems from, I was listening in on a Twitter space, and an artist came on and kind of self-identified as a BIPOC artist. And she talked about feeling really unseen in NFT space and in Twitter spaces, and kind of encouraging people to go out and support other Black artists that they might come across. And it was so interesting to be a fly on the wall in this conversation, because in our art space in Winnipeg and in Canada, we've been having these discussions about decolonizing the museum and the art space for a little while now. And then this same kind of language was translated to Twitter space kind of in real time. And it was just a really interesting conversation to listen in on. So I wonder, do you feel like NFTs are different than the in real life art worlds? Do you feel like they are run differently and have different lenses applied, or have different opportunities for all artists?
Okay, sure. Well, there's something you have to keep in mind. I wish I could remember where I saw this, but there are more living millionaire artists today than any other time in the history of art, due to the digital art world. Now, as who are those millionaires that are living today? It'd be nice to know a couple on how they did it, but with the digital art world, like you can be anonymous, and it like I said, people are just so more open nowadays, especially through the internet, are more accepting in the art world from people who are either different gendered or different class, whether it's financial class or, like, I'm probably gonna explain myself right here, but the other thing you have to remember too is that the digital art world is so saturated that if you are feeling you're left out, yeah, most of us are, because it is so saturated, and it probably doesn't have to do with you as a person. It's not a personal attack, I don't think. I could be wrong, but like I said, there's just, I know when COVID hit and the digital art world just exploded on the internet because everybody was at home and heard about Beeple and heard about you can make millions. Like, everybody became an artist, everybody became a digital artist, and it just oversaturated the market. So I think to get a proper perspective if someone's feeling left out, you would have to have a few years of that. And is it because of you, or is it because your people just aren't interested in your type of art? There's just a lot of factors that come into it. And like I said, my stuff gets lost only because there are so much NFTs out there. Like, stop it, people, stop it.
Yeah, I'll read another quote because I like quotes. But I had come across this really interesting article that quantified through science, quantified the NFT space, particularly looking at Foundation as the platform. But anyways, the quote says, NFTs offer a mechanism for artists to create digital works of art and validate their work as unique, eternal, and worth collecting, and offers collectors the ability to showcase their collections on digital platforms. Driven by this technological innovation, digital art experienced 2.5 billion in sales just within the first 2 quarters of 2021. So it's a little bit of an older stat, as we've talked about. The market has since, crashed since then and maybe gotten a little bit more flooded, but there is that potential out there for anyone who's willing to kind of put in the work and grab it. We had a question come up in the chat, or I guess more of a comment, but it does actually relate to something in that Loretta Todd quote that tweaks my interest. So Loretta Todd talks about, thinking about future generations and thinking generationally. And one thing that comes up with crypto is environmental sustainability, because there is this huge amount of energy required for these transactions. But the comment from someone was just that some galleries now operate on a blockchain that uses less energy than it takes to write a text message. So JD, do you know anything about that with the environmental kind of challenges of NFTs and crypto?
I don't understand all of it, or I don't know all of it yet. I know they are trying to find ways to make it less of an environmental impact. So let me tell you a story. So it might help a little bit. So I happen to know somebody who owns a Bitcoin mine here in Manitoba. And I know that the energy that so Manitoba Hydro, they create so much energy per year. And some of that energy just never gets used and just goes off into the atmosphere wherever it goes. So my buddy has a Bitcoin mine, and he buys that energy that nobody else buys. So that energy doesn't go into the atmosphere or whatever, it goes into his mine. And so in a way, I wish I could explain it better. He was able to harness that energy that's not being used, harness it and use it to create Bitcoin, mine the Bitcoin. That's not at a huge risk to the environment because like recycled energy he's using. But I don't know all of it. I don't understand all of it.
So, and for those not familiar, what's a Bitcoin mine?
Whew, okay.
Is there an easy explanation?
Basically, it's a bunch of computers that are trying to solve problems. And if they solve a problem, Bitcoin is issued to that computer, to the owner.
Okay. I'm just trying to review if I had any other questions to ask you, JD. Oh, I did skip one of the resources that I used quite a bit in preparing for the talk today was a podcast called Web3 and NFT for Newbies. So if any of you are listening and want to review some of the terms and things like that I talked about, I think we'll put a link in the show description afterwards, after the talk. So you can check that out, or you can just Google that name. But I do believe they even have like cheat sheets with all the terminology you need to know to kind of get into NFTs. So you can check that out. And JD, if you have any other recommendations as well, I can add those after the talk. But so if anyone has any more questions, please do type them in the chat. We've got a few more minutes to go. I'll just take a quick look. JD, anything I missed? Anything you wanted to say about NFTs or about, your digital art that I missed?
No, it's a learning curve. There's a lot of passwords. There's a lot more than just creating a digital art piece and putting it out there. Timing is involved. Yeah, there's a little bit more to it. Do your research so you don't get screwed over, and good luck, and if you make it big, contact me. I want to know. I'd be so happy for you. I will buy you a coffee. Uh, I'd love to meet somebody who makes it big in the NFT world. That'd be awesome. It'd be a great feeling to know that, hey, I know somebody.
I know it's this very strange space where I don't know that I know, other than you, JD, any local artists on my NFT Twitter feed. I know people, I follow people all over the world. Oh, that's not true. I have one friend who makes art in NFTs, but I did one last question I wanted to ask you, JD. You kind of talked a little bit about different audiences and things like that, but I was curious, specifically, is there a way, do you work differently in NFT space and marketing and connecting with people in NFT space than you would in the physical space? Like if you were, going to exhibit in a gallery or work with an art dealer, is it similar or is it very different?
There are similarities to it. There are a little bit differences. Let's see. So when you're dealing with physical objects, and you're trying to sell something, you have to know where's the money. Like, where does the money come from? Like, people aren't generally born rich. It takes time. So if someone's been working for 10 years over somebody who's only working for 1 year, well, that somebody of 10 years is probably gonna have a little bit more money to spend on a piece of art. So you have to know your target audience, not only who likes your art, but who's willing to buy it at your prices. And once you know that, for example, like the painting you see behind me, like I'm asking $5,000 for that. Now, I may never get it for a few years, which I'm okay with. Because I know somebody who's younger than myself may not be able to afford it. Somebody who's older than me will want a physical painting rather than an NFT. So you kind of have to know all the markets and where your art falls into place. Like, just because you create a digital art piece doesn't mean it belongs there. You might find your clients actually prefer your particular work on a physical canvas. So there's lots to consider.
Absolutely. And that does tweak my memory that there was one other thing I wanted to ask. Pricing. Do you have any tips on pricing NFTs? Because that's a big part of it.
Yeah, it is. There doesn't seem to be any standard with NFTs. It's more of a gut feeling of what you think your artwork is worth. For example, like I price my artwork per the inch on a canvas. The NFT, I sort of do the same thing, but it's in terms of Ethereum rather than Canadian cash. By the inch, it's best to research that. Maybe there's more of a standard now than when I was doing it, a year or 2 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, the advice I came across just said to price around the same you would price a physical piece of work, or slightly less. But I don't know.
which makes sense, especially if you're starting out and you want your credibility to be there. Start off like a beginner painter, for example. Just start off a little lower until you establish that name, and then your prices will go up. Like I said, Beeple, 10 years, he gave them away for free, but he made 69 million in the 10th year. Wow.
Fair enough. All right. Well, I think that about does it for this evening. So hopefully you learned some things tonight and you want to jump into the NFT space with me and JD. And we'll have to post our handles so people can follow us and connect with us afterwards. I think, I don't even know mine off the top of my head now. Do you know your handles to share with
I don't.
folks? We'll post them after so you can find us. But yeah, I've been chatting with JD Hawk about all things NFT and crypto, and I'm Sarah Hodges-Kolisnyk for First Fridays in the Exchange. I hope you get out there and check out some other events this evening in the Exchange. firstfridayswinnipeg.org is the place to get all the lists of all the events going on tonight. And of course, I guess we have Pride events throughout the weekend as well. So hopefully we get some good weather and everyone can go and check those out. tune in next month. We will have J.A. Seuss hosting the talk next month. And thank you for your time tonight, JD.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Good night, everyone.